Ever wondered how to talk about cutting-edge science in your IELTS exam? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unlock the exact vocabulary you need by diving into the incredible story of the super tomato. We'll break down these powerful word combinations, collocations, that can really help boost your score. So, let's jump right in. So, let's start with a big question. We hear all this buzz about scientific innovation, right? But how does that actually apply to the food on our plates? And maybe more importantly for you, what is the precise high-level vocabulary you need to discuss this whole agricultural revolution? Okay, so this story kicks off with a truly groundbreaking idea. The reading passage we're looking at explains how scientists are using what they call a revolutionary technique. That technique is genome editing. And what's the goal? To completely transform and secure our global food supply. Right there, those three collocations are a perfect way to start a strong introduction for an IELTS essay on technology or food security. To really get a handle on this vocabulary, we first need to understand the core science behind the whole thing. Nailing this foundation is the key to using these terms with real confidence. First up is genome editing. The easiest way to think about this, imagine a find and replace function, but for a plant's biological instruction manual, its DNA. This tech lets scientists make incredibly precise little changes. It's pretty amazing. So, what exactly are scientists editing? They're working with the genetic material. This is the DNA itself, the fundamental blueprint that carries all the hereditary info. So when you hear genome editing, you know it's the process of changing this core genetic material. See how they connect? Now let's see how you can put this into practice. Take a look at this example. The invention of the assembly line was a revolutionary technique. You see? Using a phrase like this in a Task 2 essay about technology or really any major innovation shows a really sophisticated vocabulary. It's exactly what you need to impress the examiner and boost that lexical resource score. Okay, so we've got the science down. Now let's look at how this all moves from a lab into a field. I mean, how do you actually turn a revolutionary idea into a real-life supercrop? Well, scientists basically have three main ways to go about it. First, they can improve existing crops. Just make the plants we already grow even better. Second, they can fast-track domestication, which is a fancy way of saying they can tame wild plants way, way faster than nature would. Or, and this is the most ambitious one, they can start completely from scratch. So you might be asking, why on earth would you start from scratch? Well, think about it. Over centuries of farming, we've kind of narrowed down the gene pool of our crops. And in the process, we've lost a ton of valuable genetic diversity. By going back to wild relatives of these plants, scientists can bring back all that variety, which often includes some incredible natural resilience. This example really shows you the power of these phrases in an IELTS context. Talking about fast-track domestication is such a sophisticated way to tackle issues like the environment or agriculture. It proves you can handle complex, modern topics with ease. All right, so what's the actual result of this whole process? Let's get into the incredible traits of these super plants and see what makes them so special. What's the payoff? The difference is, well, it's dramatic. A standard crop can be pretty vulnerable, but a super crop is basically engineered for survival. It can be resistant to diseases, so it can fight off infections. It can be salt tolerant, meaning it can grow in soils that other plants can't. And this is a huge one. On a warming planet, it can be drought or heat tolerant. The whole point here is that scientists are carefully selecting for desirable traits. And it's not just about survival. It's also about unlocking potential health benefits, like packing more vitamins into a tomato. This kind of research could even help us identify brand new edible plants from the thousands of species we don't even use right now. Here is a perfect, super topical example for your exam. When you're talking about climate change, and you probably will, using a phrase like drought and heat tolerant is specific, it's accurate, and it shows you have a strong command of the vocabulary. This is exactly what examiners are looking for. So we've covered the science, the process, and the final product. But there's one last massive step. How does a super tomato actually get from a lab onto the shelf at your local market? This is where we see the real-world impact. This journey from lab to market involves a few really key ideas. The ultimate goal, remember, is securing the global food supply. One cool strategy is to turn obscure plants, species we don't normally eat, into new staple crops, the kind of basic foods our diets are built on. For that to work, it has to be developed as a commercial crop, meaning it can be grown and sold for a profit. And of course, absolutely none of this can happen without gaining regulatory approval. Now, this phrase, regulatory approval, is incredibly useful. It just means getting official permission from the authorities. And as this example shows, it's not just for farming. You can use it when you're talking about business, law, medicine, public health. It's a really versatile and high-level collocation to have in your toolbox. Whew, we have covered a lot of important vocabulary. So let's take a second to review all of these powerful collocations. And hey, this is the perfect moment to grab a screenshot for your study notes. And here it is, your complete vocabulary list. We've talked about the core science with terms like genome editing and genetic material. We explored the process with phrases like fast-track domestication. We've described the awesome outcomes with traits like being salt-tolerant. And finally, we looked at the real-world impact with concepts like a commercial crop and getting regulatory approval. Every single one of these is a powerful tool for expressing complex ideas with total precision. And that leads us to one final thought-provoking question for you. Now that you've got the vocabulary, think about this. What other global challenges, besides just food security, could we possibly solve by turning obscure plants into new staple crops? It's a pretty fascinating thing to consider. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.